Now we're going to use the Magicals in another way with water. So we're going to actually do some watercolor with them. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp and emboss my images. And I'm embossing them with gold powder because I think that would be pretty with these Magicals colors, as well as it's perfect for fall. So I'm doing 3 stamps of the leaf image, and then I'm doing 1 of this sentiment, and I just chose a one that says it's your special day. And then I'm going to emboss them all at once. If you're more comfortable, you can do each piece individually. And I'm using black watercolor paper here. You could also do this with white watercolor paper or cream watercolor paper. It doesn't necessarily have to be black. I just like the way this looked on the black background. So I've got a little bit of embossing powder here that's stuck to the paper. I need to brush that off before I emboss my image, otherwise that will melt right on the cardstock as is, and I don't want it there. There we go. So I'm using a heat gun here to emboss. A heat gun is not like a blower dryer. It emits heat, so it's going to melt that powder. And you'll notice too that while I was embossing, I would just kind of slowly move my heat gun around. One thing that a lot of people do is they do this, and that just spreads the heat around. It doesn't actually make it emboss faster. It takes a little bit longer actually if you do it that way. So if you're just patient and move it around slowly as the powder melts, you'll have a better embossed image. You won't have to go back and touch it up. So I'm going to put a little bit of each of these powders in my little watercolor palette here. You will need something that has a little bit of a dip in it, or else you can use like a old sour cream lid or something like that. That would work as well. And if you happen to make too much watercolor, they do dry up in your palette, so you don't have to worry about it staying wet. I'm only using a little tiny bit here just because I still have some in my tray here. And I'm just gonna spray a little bit of water in there, get that going. I'm not using the blue, I'm just using the green, the orange, the red, and the brown. So I've got my watercolor brush here. I like this one because it has water in the handle, so as I want a new color, I can just squeeze the water through my brush and it cleans the tip off. But you could also use one where you dip it into water as well. So the one thing with turning these into watercolor paints is you don't get all the different like dots of color within the color. That all mixes up. And I chose to do this on black watercolor just for something a little bit different. Also works on white, and obviously also works with other images as well. I did this one here. So this one here is on black, same colors. And then I also did it on white. On white, you definitely see the different colors of the pigments a lot better. But some people don't know that black watercolor paper exists, or that you can use it or whatnot. So I just figured I'd try something a little bit different. Because there's that shimmer in there, it does give the paint some opacity so that you can see the color on a dark background. And there's not really any rhyme or reason as to what color I'm painting the leaves. I'm just going in and kind of randomly doing some in some colors and some in the other colors. And I'm choosing to do each leaf a different color rather than mixing colors on a single leaf, but you could absolutely mix colors if you wanted to. These leaf stamps are a little bit smaller. If they were bigger images, I probably would mix the colors, but this is what I had for leaf stamps. So I'm going to leave that for a few minutes for the paint to completely dry before gluing it onto my card base. I'll see you in a moment. All right, the watercolor is dry now, and it really only took a few minutes because those areas were not very large. It didn't take very long. So I'm going to glue my image piece to the background. There we go. And I am going to take my acrylic block just to hold it down while I'm doing the bow. I kind of thought it looked a little bit plain without something basically holding it together or whatnot. So I chose to do a bow, and I have just a ribbon scrap here that I've had for a very long time that matches the colors and then also has a gold trim. Obviously any ribbon color would work. And depending on what stamp you choose, you may not necessarily need to have a ribbon on there. Like those butterfly ones, I didn't need that. But for this, I just thought it suited it a little bit better. And now I'm going to glue that ribbon on there. I do need to leave this card alone without touching it for a little while, just because the wet adhesive with the ribbon, it's going to take a little while for that to dry. But there we go. Very, very simple, very easy, but another way to use your magicals or your mica powders.